FPL Game Week 13 top transfer targets with the deadline fast approaching, of course, on Friday evening. In today's video, we're going to have a look at some of those best players to buy. We're going to be discussing those four forwards that I'm sure you're all considering buying this week. Should it be Cunha? Should it be Alexander Isak? Should it be Nicholas Jackson? Or should it be the cheapest of the lot in Pedro? We'll also be discussing a few players. Should you be selling all of your Manchester City assets? What should you be doing with a few other players who have blanked? And how much of a priority is Bukayo Saka this week? What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here as well. And we're looking at those top players to buy. Just before we do, very exciting that Fantasy Football Scout, who do sponsor these videos, are running a Black Friday deal where you get 7 days free of premium memberships. Now, that might sound great, you know, a nice little Black Friday deal. But of course, the thing to remember is we have a midweek deadline during next week, which is game week 14. So if you sign up now or before the Friday deadline, you will basically get access to the whole Fantasy Football Scout premium members area that I use for these videos and a lot myself for not only game week 13, game week 14, and then game week 15 as well, which is 3 days. And it's a free trial during Black Friday. And if you like it, you continue it. If not, you can end it. So go and check it out. We use it a lot throughout these videos. The first thing that I use it for is to have a look at the fixture tickets. So to talk about a few players that we should potentially be looking to sell, partly because the fixtures coming up are not quite as good. I mean, the first one is Semenyo, and that's because he picked up his 5th yellow card of the season. He's now suspended. Big thing for me when you get a suspended player is I would be looking to bench them. Semenyo is cheap enough that hopefully you have cover on your bench that you can look to play him in some of the upcoming fixtures like Spurs at home, Ipswich away, West Ham at home, after the Wolves away in game week 13 fixture. I think I would be looking to bench him. That's what I'm doing in my team, so I wouldn't sell him. Now, then we move on to Manchester City, probably one of the big talking points. I think you should be selling all your Manchester City players now. I think we've seen enough for a consistent enough of time that they are sells for me. The only particular one that you might want to look to hold is Gvardiol in defence, partly because some of their upcoming fixtures are actually slightly better. He also combines good attacking threat with okay defensive numbers. They're giving up chances, but their defensive data is actually not that bad. Rico Lewis is not offering enough. He's not nailed, so he should definitely go. Same with Phil Foden. Anyone who's got De Bruyne should do the same. Gvardiol you could potentially look to hold on to. Only thing with Haaland is if you don't sell him this week, he's maybe not a sell next week in game week 14, whereas Forest at home and might arguably be one of the best captains. And then again in game week 15 as well. From game week 14 onwards, the fixtures do start to look a lot better. But we will talk about some forwards in this video that just look like they are outperforming him, if not matching him, for much, much cheaper. So I think it is time to move away from an Erling Haaland team structure to a lot of those premium midfielders and even cheaper forwards who are performing very, very well. Next up is Bryan Mbeumo. So, of course, I don't think many of you will be looking to sell him this week. However, he's not performing well over the past couple of games. And from game week 14, the fixtures do start to look a little bit worse for Brentford. I don't think he's a priority sell. I do think there are a lot of you who will look to sell. And if you don't have a Palmer, a Saka, or a Mo Salah in your team and you want to do Mbeumo up to any of those, then I will not stop you doing that. However, if you already own those three like me and you've still got Mbeumo, the replacements for him are a little bit more difficult, and it's in that situation that I don't think he's a definite sell. But if you want to sell Mbeumo up to any of those three, then yeah, I would go and do it. And a similar thing applies to Brennan Johnson. Now, he didn't start against Manchester City, and maybe it's the same team again where they go with Maddison and Kulusevski, they go with Son, and they go with Dominic Solanke as well. That's a little bit less clear about the minutes because Mbeumo is going to play 90 minutes every week. So if you don't sell him, you can still play him. Whereas Johnson, there's a little bit of uncertainty. I would still predict, partly because Benton Corey is, of course, suspended, that we might see that midfield of Kulusevski and Maddison come back and Jonathan coming back onto the wing. So it's a similar thing to Mbeumo for me. If you want to sell him to go to either a Saka, Palmer, or a Mo Salah, then I would do it. If it's not to one of those three, then I would probably wait a week to see if he gets back in the team, because if he does, he's not a bad long-term hold. And the big thing for this week, it is time to really buy Arsenal. Some people weren't certain on it going into the Forest at home game, but we saw the Arsenal of old coming back. Odegaard back in the team. Declan Rice is back in training. Although there's no Ben White, Timber is a great replacement at right back. Then they've got Calafiori at left back. So much going on. The only thing is slight rotation up front with Kai Havertz dropping out, but we look like we saw the Arsenal of old. So, of course, there's no recommendation to buy Kai Havertz just because he is pretty first choice, but we've shown now that he's not 100% nailed as he didn't start the Nottingham Forest at home game in game week 12. There's no Calafiori on this, although there is a Timber, just because They have a lot more left backs. So they have a Zinchenko, they have Tomiyasu who can play there. They've got Kieran Tierney and they've got Calafiori. Timber can play on the left-hand side as well. Whereas at right back, there are much, much less options. So I do prefer, if you're going to punt on a cheaper option, to go for a Timber. The other thing is Calafiori is just the same price as a Saliba and Gabriel, who are much, much more nailed. So if you want an Arsenal defender, Gabriel is definitely top. And if you want an Arsenal attacker, Saka is definitely top. Those two for me are non-negotiables. It's where you go for a potential third one. I don't mind Martin Odegaard, but the issue is there are so many good attackers in the game at the moment that he doesn't really feel like a priority when you can own an Mbeumo, you can own those cheap forwards, you can own a Saka, a Palmer, a Salah. I do think it's worth finding the money for Saka over for Odegaard. I don't mind him, but I'm not sure I'd be going there. Then you look in defence. So as I said, Calafiori is the same price as Saliba, so I wouldn't go Calafiori. If you don't have the money for Saliba, I don't hate Timber. I don't think he'll play every game between now and Christmas, and that does put me off a little bit, that he's going to miss the occasional game. They might see Partey at right back if he's not needed in midfield or something like that. Now, my advice if you're looking to buy Timber is to wait until game week 16. And the reason for that is there are 3 games coming in the space of a week now. West Ham away, Man United at home, and Fulham away. And they're not fantastic defensive fixtures. They might keep 1 or maybe 2 clean sheets in there at a very push, I think, 2. They almost certainly won't keep 3 in my eyes. So if you want Timber, I would wait until game week 16 when the fixtures start to get a lot better. And if he starts 13, 14, 15, including the Champions League this week as well, then you can look to have an investment in Timber. But if he misses one of 13, 14, 15, then I think it's pretty clear that you don't want to buy him and you go for someone safer like a Saliba, or you go for the safe option in David Raya. I've got David Raya. He feels just like a long-term set and forget goalkeeper. If it was actually me now on wildcard, I don't think I would go Raya. I think I would go for Bruggen in goal if I was on wildcard this week. But if you do want double arse defense and you just want Gabriel and Raya, I don't want to put you off that because that's what I've got. And it feels like a very nice long-term hold for probably, 20 weeks almost until the end of the season. So having a look at some defenders to buy. So a lot of you looking to sell Rico Lewis. To go through some of the cheaper ones. If you need real budget options, Kirkes is top, goes away to Wolves this week. I actually prefer him a little bit over Lewis Hall. Partly just because of the performances we've seen in the weekend. Bournemouth looked not bad, although losing to Brighton, and West Ham absolutely pushed over Newcastle. So I have dropped Lewis Hall down to 2. Both of them have good fixtures this week, though, if you do need to go and buy them. I don't mind Ezri Konsa as a not bad long-term pick. He has a flag at the moment, but he has been pictured back in Aston Villa training. He should be in their starting lineup for their Champions League game on Wednesday, and he's 4.4. He goes away to Chelsea this week, which isn't great, but has nice fixtures from game week 14 onwards. So depending on what week you need them, I don't mind that. However, I like some of the more expensive ones a little bit more. So Aït-Nouri, if you've got the money, is still a really good buy. He is on 4 yellows, but the fixtures and the attacking returns are definitely there. Van Heck is probably my favourite. So if you were to rank all the way up all of these 6 in order, Aït-Nouri would be top, Van Heck would be second, and then Colwill sort of gets integrated in amongst, probably just below Kirkes and probably above Lewis Hall. So Van Heck I really like, particularly because of the fixture at home to Southampton this week. He's nailed. He got the Campty armband when someone went off during the week as well. And then I don't hate Levi Colwill. Chelsea look a little bit more solid. He should play all the minutes over Christmas. There are some nice runs of fixtures. So that's the sort of breakdown. But if I had to rank this top 6, it would go Aït-Nouri, Van Heck, Kirkes, Colwill, Hall, and then Konsa. If you have the money, double arse defense is absolutely the way you should be going. Gabriel is top, Saliba is second, and then I spoke about Timber a little bit earlier on if you fancy a bit of a punt. And then third, I've actually gone with Van Dijk. Some of you want to look at a Pedro Porro, for example, and I don't hate that, but their first choice keeper, Vicario, who is part of the reason they are not completely bottom of the league for a defense, is now out for a fair few months with a broken ankle, which he played with for 60 minutes against Manchester City at the weekend. Just means the clean sheets are even less likely to come. And if defenders are not getting clean sheets, although they might be scoring, the bonus points are pretty hard to come by. So I'm not sure I'd go there. Van Dijk has Manchester City this week, so it's probably not to buy this week, but long term I like him. Konate has 4 yellow cards, but I still don't hate him as a long-term pick. He's still in my plans, but maybe just not this week. Having a look at a few other players, just getting the Fantasy Football Scout fixture ticker up. As I said, it's Black Friday. You can get 7 days premium access for free with their Black Friday deal. So Wolves are at top, which is why we like Aït-Nouri. We've got Brighton in second, which is why I am a big fan of Van Heck. You could go as Stupinan, but I don't think he's got the attacking threat that we have in our minds that he used to have. Arsenal in there. West Ham, you could have a look at a Wan-Bissaka, but they've got Arsenal at home this week, and I'm just not sold that what we saw against Newcastle is really what we'll get long term. Who else have we got up there? Chelsea, we've already spoken about. I'd probably go Colwill. If Reece James is out for a while, you could punt on a Malagusto, but we've seen Chelsea play centre-back to right-back before. Bournemouth, we've spoken about with Kirkes as well. And then lower down the list, there's a little bit of a mix-up of fixtures. So to talk a little bit about forwards, before we look at the top 4 forwards to buy, to have a look at the forwards that people are looking to sell and to talk about whether you should sell them. First one is Raul Jimenez. I think he's a really, really easy sell. If you have Jimenez this week and you want to move to a forward that we're talking about on the next page, I would do it, and I would do it for a hit this week. Fixture's starting to turn a little bit. He's not really being that clinical in front of goal. When they play weekend, midweek, weekend, I would not be surprised in game week 13 at Brighton at home if we see Rodrigo Muniz to come back into that lineup as well. He went through a really hot period and now it's definitely drying out. So I would sell Jimenez and I'd probably sell him for a hit. Chris Wood is a little bit more difficult. I think from game week 13, I will look to sell him. He's in my team. But in game week 12, I think I'm going to give him the opportunity of Ipswich at home. But if you want to do Chris Wood down to a João Pedro to free up a bit of money for a second transfer this week, then I don't mind it. But if it's just straight Chris Wood to João Pedro, I think I would wait a week. Danny Welbeck is a really interesting one. We've actually heard today that it is likely that Evan Ferguson might leave on loan in January, which makes Danny Welbeck obviously first choice, obviously pretty nailed. It might be that João Pedro plays some minutes there, but it's unlikely that that's really going to happen. So despite the returns that we've seen in the past couple of weeks, I do think I would keep hold of Danny Welbeck, even if you want to move to João Pedro. If that 0.4 frees up money for another move, then I don't hate it, but I'm not sure I'd make that sideways move. Visa falls into a similar camp of Brown and Burmo. He's slightly cheaper. He's definitely not a priority sell. If you want to move to one of the other forwards after this Leicester at home fixture, you can. But of course, Leicester don't have a manager at the moment, so I'm not even certain that it's a sell this week. Maybe in game week 13, but it's not a priority. And then Strand Larsen. If you went Strand Larsen over Cunha, you went for the cheaper option. I do think I'd be looking to sell him. I don't think he's a priority sell. If you want Strand Larsen this week, that's absolutely fine. He is a fine long-term hold. Some of the upcoming fixtures are really nice, but I would expect the forwards we're about to talk about to outscore all of these pretty comfortably over the next 5 weeks, apart from maybe Danny Welbeck. So those forwards, of course, are Alexander Isak, Jackson, Cunha, and João Pedro. They are the top 4 forwards that are brought in this week. You are looking to buy them. You want me to discuss them. So just to have a look at some of their underlying data and their points they've scored so far this season. Underlying data actually massively favours João Pedro. He is also the cheapest. He's also had the best points per 90, and he also has the best fixture this week. He's probably got to be right up there. The only slight concern is the minutes, which is why I actually probably wouldn't put him as my number 1 ranking of those 4. It's just with those 3 games, they now have, I think they have a decent break. So they play Friday, Wednesday, Sunday. So it's actually a pretty decent sort of rest period between them. So I think he plays all 3, but he might only play 60-70 in all 3. Cunha has the worst underlying data, but his points per 90 has actually been really good. He's overperformed his data. If you believe in XG or you don't, he has outperformed maybe what we've expected, because we saw like that goal in the most recent fixture he scored from outside the box. Is that going to happen every week? Probably not, but is he a player very much on form? Absolutely. And then you have a look at comparing the top 2, Isak and Jackson. Jackson on 4 yellow cards. Jackson's underlying data is better though, and Jackson's points per 90 is better. But Jackson's on 4 yellows and his minutes are slightly less secure, particularly with an away fixture at Southampton midweek. As a Chelsea fan, I have a slight bit of doubt about whether Jackson starts away at Southampton. So, for me to rank these, Cunha is number 1 for good fixtures, good form, and nailed. João Pedro easily number 2. He might even be number 1. And then the 2 others, they don't feel like they're better than the 2 cheap options. So because they're more expensive, they do go 3rd and 4th in my ranking. I know Alexander Isak disappointed on Monday night, but he did get good data. He did have a goal ruled out offside, and he did have chances in that game. So maybe it's because I've bought him and I'm pessimistic as a Chelsea fan that Jackson might miss that Southampton away game, that I would go Jackson number 4, Isak number 3. But if you just think Jackson starts all of the next 3 games, then he goes above Alexander Isak. So just to wrap up and talk about a few midfielders. So of course, Salah, Palmer, Saka are the top priority midfielders that you should be looking to buy, and they are the best ones. There are also nice cheap ones. I don't mind Rodgers, although he goes away to Chelsea. Semenyo also suspended. There is a sudden dry up of those this week, but Rodgers and Semenyo are still good from game week 14 onwards. To look at that sort of mid-price option, and the reason a lot of these midfielders are starting to become a little bit more popular is because the very high owned Brian and Burmo is approaching a more difficult run of fixtures. So to start off with Bruno Fernandes, we saw him be really ineffective at most of that game against Ipswich in game week 12. I definitely wouldn't be buying Bruno Fernandes now. Amorim said that he wants to see Bruno Fernandes picking up the ball more and being on the ball more, and that means he's likely to drop deeper. And that's not what you want from an FPL asset. He might get assists, but it's not great for his goal threat. Everton at home this week is a good fixture, but after that, they have Arsenal away, Forest at home, City away. For me, it's a wait and see now, Manchester United, probably until game week 17 or 18, once they've got a few weeks to try and get that new Amorim system underway. Next up is Maddison. Now, I appreciate that Maddison has scored twice against Manchester City, and he's got Fulham at home this week, and he looks like a fantastic buy. He is not nailed. Just like Brennan Johnson is a bit of a doubt to start, so is Maddison. They may be competing for the same spot. I would not buy Maddison. If he starts against Fulham again and looks good, then maybe we consider it. But it's too much of a risk for me to go and buy Maddison now. One midfielder I do really like is Mitoma of Brighton, Southampton at home. He is the most nailed Brighton attacker, probably outside Danny Welbeck at the moment, and maybe João Pedro. He's probably top, actually, of the most nailed for minutes. And he's pretty good for bonus. He's always involved in what they do. He is top for me at the moment as a potential Brian Mbeumo replacement from game week 14. The only issue with that is I'm not selling Mbeumo this week, and I'd missed the Mitoma fixture at home Southampton. But I like Mitoma more than I like Maddison and more than I like Fernandes. And then the final one is Bowen. I don't think any of you are looking to buy Bowen this week, but if West Ham can perform like they did on Monday night against Newcastle, from game week 14 onwards, they do start to have a bit of a nicer run and could be one for you to go and have a look at. But I'm not sure now is the time yet to be starting to buy in West Ham. I think if it's me, I'm going to go Mitoma, or I'm just going to sell Mbeumo for a cheaper midfielder in the likes of Rodgers, or I might just end up holding on to him. I don't love a lot of these mid-price ones. They don't just feel like they're worth the money over some of the cheaper ones. Like Mitoma's only 6.4, which is why I probably prefer him over the others that we've got here. So this is top players to buy. There will be my team selection and final decisions videos out before a Friday night deadline, so a reminder of that. A quick reminder that is a Black Friday offer from Fantasy Football Scout where they are doing 7 days free. So if you do sign up before the game week 13 deadline, you will get 3 game weeks worth of membership because it's 7 days from the date you sign up. So that will take you all the way into the end of next week as well. So go and check that out. If you want a bit more content, the podcast is out. Drop any questions you have though, most importantly about your team. We will discuss in detail captaincy. I know it's a big decision this week on the final decisions video on Friday. At the moment, my armband is on Mo Salah. It might end up on Palmer. I don't think I'm going to go differential with one of the forwards though. I think I'm going to stay with one of the bigger hitters like the boring manager I am. But we'll discuss all of that on Friday. I know some of you are asking about captaincy, but let's get closer to it after the Champions League. Let's see how many minutes people play before we officially decide on a ranking. Any other questions about your team, drop it all in the comment section down below. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.